heavy equipment and level things out and, fix fields, so.
Yeah, I hear
But
you.
I agree with you. Ultimately, the ideal would be,
So there was a report on how to, all the different levels that you can use to fix that. And of course, as everyone's probably aware, none of them are cheap. It's all very, very expensive. So what Johnson Favreau recommended was level 1, the cap. So as Director Stevens been adding the cost the feasibility study adds, because once we get into adding those costs, why don't we just do the feasibility study? So in reference to what you're specifically asking, seeing that the feasibility study, we reference on the page that this feasibility study was done for the reason that that would be the next step. So we have this plan that isn't nearly as expensive, but if the community, if city council, if people are willing to spend the money, then the first thing we have to do is cap it, which would be in the feasibility study.
Okay, thank you. I saw a lot of comments about the dog park. I know that it is nearly impossible to grow any. Okay, great. Is there some way that they have an idea of how we might be able to put like a little something in there so that a tree could actually grow? Because I know there's been multiple attempts to do so, and there's that one tree that is a like champion that can manage it, but no other trees have ever survived in there. The other one to follow with that, at least I didn't see anything in the study that recommended any other options.
I mean, other things I've seen, I know in Long Beach, we had one that was mulch, which was just basically like what you would see in like some of the playgrounds so that was the one option. I mean, grass would be impossible to grow there. It just, being torn up, the dogs running around.
I'm not even getting to that part. It won't grow there.
Right.
Like,
So
there's no soil, there's nothing.
I don't know how many more trees they would want. I've been by there. I think there's a decent number of trees in there. I mean, they're kind of around the edges, but there's a couple.
And the shade structures.
There's there as opposed, because it's just too impossible to grow stuff in there.
Just one thought, at Glenalla Park, I think it's still called Glenalla, in LA, that's just over, they have artificial turf in their dog park that then like once a week, they spray with something to clean it down. I think because it's just less dusty, and so then your dog doesn't come home quite so dirty, or get in your car quite so dirty, which is one thought. But I don't know if
I don't think all artificial turf will be an option in Culver City. I don't think there's any, and just not being allowed in a lot of places. Most people aren't putting it in anymore, so I don't even think that's an option.
Generally a petroleum-based product, right?
Right,
And
so
that's
it's
part of
just
It
not.
gets extremely hot. It's
It
not
does
good
get
for
hot.
the environment. It gives off fumes. Probably the same stuff that's in the used tires that you're referencing.
Is still made
Yeah.
out of those types of things, and it breaks down. And I don't think artificial turf's going to be an option.
Yes, I think it'd be helpful if they could give us some options of some other types of ground cover that could be used for the dog park. Just kind of there. Okay, accessible. There was more than 5 years ago, it was all upgraded over there. And I thought the whole point of it was to make it ADA compliant. So what am I missing?
Which park are you talking about?
At
Still
Culver City Park.
I didn't even leave Culver City yet.
Okay.
The width of it is 88, so that I wasn't around for the upgrade, so that
Okay.
might have been what they focused on.
Oh, yeah.
But the
To that, and they still didn't get it right. Ouch. Okay.
So we're talking a shoot.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that. That's upsetting. Okay. There was no mention about kind of upgrades to the snack bars near the sports fields or the restrooms. I think both of those things need updating up there. So I'd like this rooms need to be younger than 70 years old. Like, they need to be upgraded, and it's one of the areas, I think, of the park where lots of people use it and see it and complain about it, and so I think that should be in there too, just talking about that, right? Upgrades to those, as Commissioner Peters mentioned, like, hey, we could do that ourselves, right? And, yeah, I think the coffee bar would be great for those early morning games and whatever, like, people get creative, so yeah. And lighting, are we planning to light all the fields that are proposed? Put in kind of permanent lighting structures, the LED stuff? That wasn't clear in the,
Yeah,
but
I
I'm just
don't,
asking.
I don't know if that was in the feasibility study. I don't think we added that in this study. It was just keeping the existing lighting. I mean, there are, you know, I don't know. I'm not saying it couldn't be done, but I think part of the issue is you'd have to be,
There's definitely, I mean, we have the portable lights up there, so you know there's demand for lighting up there, so it's not a surprise to anybody.
And just to back up what Director Stevens said, one reason the feasibility study is able to add lighting is if you look with a magnifying glass, they actually don't add it to the upper field, they add it to the parking structure. So it's done and very creative with how they do it. But that is one difference because they aren't fixing that land up there in the parks plan.
So you're saying in the feasibility study, the lights are on the parking structure, but they do provide lighting for the. All right, okay, that's it for Culver City Park. All right, veterans. So, I understand the moving of the softball field. I guess my concern is, right, because we now move the backstop toward closer to homes, are we concerned about, or are we mitigating the possibilities of flies, wild throws, things like that, going into also like additional noise? So right now, where the field is kind of middle, so it's a little away from all the rest of the residential homes that are on the west and south side, right? But moving it to that corner, you're gonna put like right up there, right? So right on the corner. So I don't know if we've thought about what that,
after 10. It's
Oh.
like 10:15. The last game starts at 9, so.
okay. Yeah, so that might be something to consider when we're talking about moving that field. I don't know if that was thought about. A lot of community feedback about we don't want the paddle tennis courts to move. Now, that doesn't mean everybody in the community doesn't want the paddle tennis courts to move, but I've heard a lot of feedback about that. And I honestly, as I mentioned before, I'm very excited about the idea of moving pickleball to Culver City Park. And I think if and when that happens, we would revert the paddle tennis courts to just paddle tennis and remain and keep the soundproofing that we've got there, that we're putting in there, because it would still serve a function with paddle tennis. So that is kind of feedback I've gotten.
One thing that a resident brought up in maybe your special meeting or maybe in a meeting, who knows, I mean, any meeting, was that there's been public urination issues. The paddle tennis courts currently do not have a restroom nearby. Part of the plan is to provide them a space with a dedicated restroom. So I understand what you're saying with the idea of reverting them back to paddle tennis so that they could keep that space. But by moving them, not only are we expanding the number of courts that we would have, but we would give them restroom facilities, which staff believes are really kind of crucial, given they don't want them moved. But we are right now believing, and again, I'm open for discussion, I'm open to hearing a lot of different things about this, but the paddle tennis courts have outgrown how they are being used, and to give an adequate facility for them so that they can go out of the line where security patrols. So we do have security on call for that space, but it is not hourly patrolled like the rest of the park because of the distance. So bring that back into being able to patrol for safety. Again, give them a dedicated restroom, which I will never say.
I got some feedback from people regarding the kind of, they don't like the parking structure because they don't want it to look like this massive cement thing right on Culver. And I'm curious if there are things that we could do to make it not so industrial. Like, is there, make it a little more interesting to look at, right? Those kinds of things. I think that would make the structure more palpable for the public. I'm 100% behind, we need it. Like, I'm not arguing we don't need a parking structure, but maybe there'll be a better way we could.
Of rendering an option that looked open and had like trees and everything, and it didn't look like a big wall just driving down Culver. And again, that's also some of the finer details. When we get to the point of actually building this thing, we would go through the design process, and that's where we could address some of those issues and make sure it doesn't look like a
Plan, not a design, because as Director Stevens mentioned, that this isn't a design process right now, but adding examples of what it could look like that isn't just what you described.
Right.
Because we understand that when people look at the plan right now, they just see a block, and Olin definitely understands that also. So they've seen any of the final pages yet, but they're working to add in just different options of what it could look like so that people can understand that it's not just going to be a cement wall.
Oh, okay. I think that would be great. That'll help people a lot. I did have a question. So, right, that's a big space where we're going to put that parking structure. Beneath it, for instance?
Vets Park is, our project actually gets in the way of it being a strong stormwater, because a lot of it's being diverted there. So the stormwater project that's recommended for vets actually falls more along Overland, and it's
Found this interesting. I didn't realize that part of the Vets building is on the historic register. What part is it, and why is it only part?
So Vets has been renovated quite a bit throughout its life. So the only feature that still remains connected to the original architect's design are the windows at, in the rotunda room. And that feature and how that feature falls on the corner. So that's, I mean, the historical analysis of the building, which was done for during the feasibility process, is a much rotunda room.
Okay, yeah, because I was like, really?
Which, in all honesty, it's not, sometimes people think historical registry means that you can't replace a building. It actually doesn't mean that. I mean, there are definitely a lot more protocols that you have to take into place, but if you design a building, again, we're talking design, which is not what Parks Plan is, but rotunda room in a new design in a new building, and the historical registry would allow that, because the historical registry isn't about letting a building go beyond its years, but they want to keep the things that make it on the registry. So it's not necessarily a brick wall that we're running up against. It's just something that would come into play more during the design process.
Yeah, I think that's funny because the one thing everybody wanted to protect is the tower, which is not on the registry.
Funnily enough, the tower is not.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for clarifying that for me. A lot of racket sports spaces, like a lot, like double or nearly triple what we got now. And so I'm just kind of trying to understand, like, is the demand that big that we need that stuff? Or could we use some of the proposed racket spaces for other things? I just felt like, man, there's like everybody's getting racket spaces. And I'm like, okay, maybe this is just the world we live in now. I'm not a racket player. Addition of so much racket court spaces in all of the designs.
Oh, yeah, those are gone.
Yeah, I don't know if it's in this one. I know we have removed the courts that were going to be on like the roof at SK. So
Okay.
like those are gone, so those
Okay.
aren't there
So
anymore.
those aren't there, okay.
So, I mean, other than that, I think there was a couple that's in, but I would say, yeah, the demand's probably there. I mean, but the good thing is about having, something like, let's just say Tellefson, for example. We put in 2 courts there. Let's say 10 years from now, nobody's using them, nobody's playing pickleball. It's a concrete slab. You could convert it to a basketball court. You could convert it to a tennis court. You could convert it to something else. We wouldn't be locked into them having to be pickleball courts for 50 years if for whatever reason nobody played it in 10 or 15 years. So I think, you know, they could be easily repurposed into something more like a basketball court or a tennis court or whatever new sport is invented 15 years from now.
Okay. All right, yeah.
And
okay.
I would need to golf courts.
Yeah, add,
Be added, okay.
yeah. Okay. You answered that question. So I know the plan also mentioned like keeping, but in the design, it doesn't look, so I know, right, they had that massive theater, not massive, but the good sized theater that could run real productions. And the idea in that was like, hey, we would have this turnaround for trucks to come in to, you know, drop off equipment, load up equipment, all that kind of stuff. And was an expansion of the playground space behind the vets building that, and I'm like, well, how would they get the trucks in to do those kinds of things if we really wanted to turn it into a real performance venue?
We can take a look at that parking structure and see.
Okay, yeah, because at least in.
I know that we had like a little bit of parking on the other side of the building.
Yeah,
like with
I
the
did
so
see that.
maybe we could use.
Because I did see that little bit of parking, like, right there, and I was like, this is a weird spot to put it. Because, yeah, earlier you said, hey, we got rid of a bunch of parking in, like, the U
I think
parking.
that was mostly ADA and like staff parking.
Okay.
What
Oh,
area
that
was gonna
little
be.
Yeah,
spot.
that area, I
Spot.
believe, direction
Okay.
was
It's gonna be
currently
like staff
focused
and
on
ADA.
Staff and ADA.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so was that comment. You could, you know, we could do just like the rest of the municipal parking lots, and you get the first hour free, and then you pay afterwards and that kind of stuff. That's something to consider. I also noticed, again, no kind of talk about the restroom. So obviously where the parking structure is in the master plan, like that's kind of where, close to where the current restrooms are that are in the park, but we should, again, for the
Meeting
feasibility study.
rooms. No,
No, in the
for
parks
this,
plan.
for
Oh,
this
in the
parks
parks plan,
plan, that
okay.
parking garage butts up against an indoor gym.
Okay.
And like the teen center was gonna, because the teen center needed to go somewhere.
Right.
And like, so there's like classrooms, like after school, or for like carp camp. Teen center.
Okay.
And then gym, and so, yeah, there would be restrooms, and then probably more restrooms up on top for the sports courts and things like that.
Yeah, just like, I didn't see, brought up earlier, parking, huge problem there. So we needed some kind of solution for that. I don't know if it's, we build it underneath the community center or something like that, but like, there's not enough parking now. And if we add additional facilities there, this is gonna be, I mean, yeah, you could get there by bus, and you could, you know, not gonna cut it on AYSO game days. So.
Well, I mean, it's already being used for soccer.
I'm aware of that, and I'm also aware of how terrible the parking is there.
Right, but I
So-
mean, other than the community center, I mean, like, we're not like adding more fields or field space or anything, so I'm,
Options of property over that side potential, and that might be a spot where we could put a parking structure that people can then walk over, that kind of thing. So, yeah, so at least what's in the master plan, the idea is that where there's soccer now, it's gonna be just multi-purpose fields, so those can be, would we be able to set up a full-size soccer field or only smaller size soccer fields, or what's the idea within that? Or what kind of space do we have on that multi-purpose field for different configurations?
I mean, the permit group that uses it now just kind of determines how they're gonna.
Okay.
I mean, it's just staying open space.
Okay, okay. Again, I just reiterate kind of my turf, using the right type of grass there, kind of thing. I was intrigued by the community recreation center. I love the idea. But what, do we have, it didn't really kind of expound upon what kind of stuff, but I don't know if there's any other more realized ideas that, of making use of that community center?
No, again, it just falls under the details. So this,
Okay.
like I said, this isn't a design. It's not the design, it's just the concept, and then we would design it.
Okay. Why no full-size basketball court there? I mean, I know the history why there wasn't one before, but that history is long gone because no Laker is going to live in Culver City anymore. Okay, the Lakers are not going to be hooping it up at midnight. I'm curious why we didn't want to keep a full-size court there.
I would say that there just hasn't been a lot of community comment about wanting a
Okay.
full-size court.
Wow, okay.
So they're a little hesitant on
right.
having one.
That's fair. I was just
I
curious.
was trying to choose my words carefully.
Yeah, no, and that's fine. Like, I mean, I've heard many stories, so, and, you know, you think parking must have been horrible at that time because everybody's like, oh, I can come see the Lakers for free, right? Okay. I did notice also, like, you know, there's a lot of nice there for rentals that we could put in there. I know there's some table spaces, but I don't know how much we get in terms of rentals for parties and those kinds of things at Fox Hills to use those picnicking areas. But, I mean, I know the public uses it pretty regularly.
Well, we have also been told that there's no parking.
Yes.
A court reason behind the need for the rec building isn't to have huge classrooms there or to, it really is for that community, especially if it could
Okay.
utilize.
All right.
So it wouldn't be that we would fill that with programming, at least that's not what we've talked about, but how, you know, my continued statement about Fox Hills Park is that right now there's a lot of apartments and they don't have a place to hold a birthday party, right?
Right.
So that's kind of the thinking behind that building. So it's kind of in line with what you're saying about the pavilion, only it will be indoors.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because when I was thinking pavilion, I was thinking exactly that. Like, it's all apartment buildings. Like, sure, there's not a lot of parking, but for that community, I know they feel underrepresented in Culver City. So getting them more amenities is always good. Okay, Lindbergh Park. Why are we removing parking at Lindbergh Park? In that section right by where the restrooms are now.
By the tennis courts and the restrooms, yeah. There's not that much parking there.
No,
Yeah.
only like 4 spots.
So, I mean, that would just push more parking into the neighborhood. I mean, they have parking, but, you know, I don't know how the residents feel about that.
I mean, again, we're looking at trying to do accessible walkways around the parking. So, the walkway. So, I mean, we're also looking at trying to do as much green passive space as possible. So, I mean, I think that's the rationale behind it. We can also revisit and look at if those 4 spaces should be added back in.
Yeah, okay. So this kind of came up, like, how would removing backstop and for kickball and stuff like that, I don't know how that,
So we met with the PAF staff that oversees the permits, and you know, and I also met with Little League, and she confirmed that Little League is the primary users of it. She
Okay.
doesn't get a lot of permits elsewhere, and you know, as Director Stevens has mentioned, you know, in that conversation with Little League, it is one of the reasons why we're putting 1 back in.
Okay.
We don't feel 2 is necessary, but 1.
okay.
1 definitely could be used. In the current proposed, we have the courts being on the one end, open fields primarily used for soccer,
Yep.
playground, and then a passive space. That passive space, they're currently working on redesigning to put the backstop in there and redistribute the passive qualities of that space to a kind of an area closer to the building. So that is getting kind of rearranged. You'll see it kind of look.
Lindbergh,
I will-
improvements needed.
I will add, Lindbergh is a primary near the top, not the top, but near the top of the list for a stormwater project with Public Works.
Wow, okay.
Another reason, so currently keeping the courts in the middle, they put 2 different projects at Lindbergh. It allows just 1 project, which we think is better than trying to get 2 there. So, but with the 1 project, irrigation, because it's stormwater, would definitely be, they would have to deal with, and they would completely fix because it's a stormwater project.
Okay, there was a comment earlier about the, like, seating, the you know, the bleachers, but as far as I read in the in the master plan, it looked more like what was mentioned before about what they've got at Playa Vista, I think is what was named, where it's kind of more berms at the end that you can kind of sit on. That's what,
Something that we're trying to like navigate with that area is we want to connect the playground to the game because parents have kids that want to play on the playground while another child is playing the game. So something that the final plan is shifting is instead of having bleachers doing tables, we're trying to allow the middle ground for families to be able to watch two kids on opposing sides.
no, 100%.
So it could be what was mentioned today during public comment with the building up the grounds somewhat. It could be picnic tables so that a family could be eating while kids are doing two activities. It could be bleachers. I mean, that's something that, again, comes down to design, and we'd work with Lindbergh community to see exactly what they need there. But as far as the parks plan is concerned, we're trying to just, again, have a middle ground where parents can have an eye.
because I got one kid playing and the other one's waiting for their game, and so I can just,
And it also lends itself to why we're recommending in this plan to move those courts to one end, because right now they interrupt everything.
yeah.
And having that all connected, I think, is something that parents would really appreciate, even if they're not thinking about it quite yet.
Oh, yeah. No, I think they are thinking. Yeah, that's a good thing. I mean, I think about Fox Hills, that's kind of the setup, right? They got the
Yes.
fields and then they got the play structure. And whenever there's soccer season on, there's probably same amount or more kids on the playground than there are actually playing in the game. So yeah, that's, okay. That's great. Thank you. All right, almost done. Spaces here, but we already kind of talked about it. And here's my challenge with that is, yeah, it's closer. I mean, that side where it is closer to kind of the commercial space and industrial space that we have over there, but there are still residents nearby. But also that is a really park poor area. So I kind of feel like we need to throw them a bone over there for some more activities. Just because they are just like, sure, they can go to vets and whatever, but like that's their community park. And the folks over at, whatchamacallit? Yes, at Carlson, or they do want it kind of, hey, we want a couple more activities to do. So I'd be curious to see how that plays out. Oh, sorry, I'm thinking of wrong. Oh, okay, backing
I
up.
think SK Park pretty much has garden, softball fields,
I was
workout
thinking of
equipment.
Oh,
Tellefson.
there we go.
Okay, I
Yeah,
was gonna
that's
say
what
they
I-
got everything.
I
at
jumped
SK.
myself here. So yeah, so that's the racket sports on top of the parking structure.
Yeah, that's
At
gone.
Cronenthal.
Okay.
And that is
that's been removed.
It has
Okay.
been removed for the final
Cool.
plan.
Sorry.
Based on feedback. That's
I
okay.
got my.
When you get to Tellefson, we'll address what.
Yeah. Don't worry, it's next. And then I did make note, like in the plan.
I'll make sure it appears for vets also.
Okay. So Tellefson, yeah. So, yep, the racket sports stuff. Yeah, that's all I was saying. Like, yeah, they don't have a lot of options, but I don't know what the community really wants. So.
I will say the community for Tellefson came to the Fiesta booth because I was there, I think, all day. I don't think anyway, doesn't matter because that was a long time ago. I mean, everyone's going to come disagree with me, but
Fine, that's okay.
They were very excited at the idea of the racket sports
Okay.
and the beach volleyball court because one issue that we are having at that park is the openness of the field has led itself to be a common place for the unhoused.
Yes.
So by giving them activities and giving them those amenities, they're hoping that it will curb a place where people are just hanging out.
Gotcha. Okay. I also noticed there's no mention of renovations to the picnic area or the restrooms in that park. I mean, it's in the restrooms certainly could use some updates. So I
You can look into it.
recommend doing that. Okay, that's it for Tellefson. Coombs. I spoke to some high school students about Coombs because they're the ones who frequent it the most. They like the new sidewalk that was put in on one side, they would like a sidewalk put in on the other side because there's a lot of foot traffic that goes to and from the high school on the other side there. And they're often walking in the street where it'd be safer if they had a sidewalk that was going there. They also mentioned it'd be helpful to get but they weren't real thrilled on the lengthwise, like connectors. They're like, what do we need this for? Additionally, they were like, I don't know how I feel about this performance/teaching space. They like the openness of what's in the middle of the park because kids go there to play soccer, like pick up and throw frisbees and footballs and stuff like that.
I will add that that space is going to look different in the final plan.
Okay.
It's not intended to be a cement amphitheater or anything like that. It's more intended, it's not going to look like this, but I think it's going to give the vibe of like the circle around a campfire idea.
Okay.
One thing that we had is trying to find story time opportunities for Tiny Tots. And so it's more like something like that at Coombs would be an exciting opportunity for the department to host story time at like, 10 a.m. or noon or something. Right. So the idea is started using the phrase, it's more going to be a gathering spot. And that's kind of the intent behind it. Again, I'm excited to see what the final look of it is in the final plan. And in January, we can definitely talk about it more when you see that final look. Okay. But that's the intent behind it. It's not going to be like a theater or a
high schoolers might be into because there's a lot of times after school, they just go there and just sit on the grass and talk or whatever. Or occasionally there's a, secondhand clothing sale, or they have all kinds of stuff that goes on in that park on top of the birthday parties and, all kinds of things. So
I think where we're coming from is it's like a step down from a picnic table. It still provides seating. It still provides middle ground between nothing and actually putting in a picnic table.
Okay. Let's see. I will echo our public comment that we really should, in the plan, they talk about a lot of areas that are influenced by Culver City. And I didn't really note that the expo line was really in that space underneath the expo line is something that we are considering. That might be something we might want to put in.
We have talked to Olin about adding it, and there is a section in the plan that, as being referenced, is potential expansions. I think is something, darn, it is getting put in.
Yeah, because I think those could be interesting, at least kind of conversations we've had about talking to Metro and stuff like that. They seem to be open to some things. So that might be some easy starters to do things.
And as my mind is thinking, it might not be in the expansion section, it might be in the partners section.
Okay.
So again, I'll get clarity of where it appears, because it might be that instead of saying this is a potential new place for parkland, it might be in a section where where it recommends us building a partnership with LA City because it's their land. So I'll look to see where it's appearing, and I'll just make it.
Be interesting to see what kind of ideas they might have for those spaces, right? That we can entertain. Like we know we've thrown around pickleball, but are there other things that we could explore there, because people are using it in all kinds of different ways around the world, all those kind of underpass spaces that have been dead spaces historically, and now people are thinking of more creative ways to use it. Right. All right. Hey, here's one thing I noted. How about a dog run there? Right? That might be a great spot. I don't know. Okay. Almost done. El Marino. There was some talk about renovating the building there, but everything I've heard about that building, it's sinking.
The Parks Plan is trying not to just tear down every single building that,
Yeah.
so.
I know, but this one was particularly problematic.
The El Marino one, they do kind of call out some of the issues, and it is in the plan to get an upgrade.
Okay.
And I will say, and maybe I can make sure Olin clarifies this better, but when we say upgrade, it's dealing with structural issues. So it needs upgrades,
Yeah.
which would be that. So El Marino is the same thing. We definitely are calling out that it is not in the best condition and needs major improvements. And then when we're, as Director Stevens has mentioned throughout the night, when we're talking design, I mean, we came across in with the Veterans Memorial Building when we were working on the feasibility study, and it's just not salvageable at this point. So that would come later, but it is highlighted in the plan that it needs upgrades and needs to be looked at.
Okay. Adam, you told me to come with all the questions.
I
so
know.
tried to
I
come with all
appreciate
the
it.
questions. So this is my last comment. So we're done with me. Significantly, because we got to front all the money before we get the money back. But I kind of sort of understand why that happened, because I'm sure there was some underhandedness that was happening. And so that's what that was all about. But yes, so to quote our president-elect, sad. But that's it for me. Thank you. Thank you for entertaining my tirade.
No, it's fine, thank you. So I know Vice Chair Alexander has quite a few things. I have quite a few things. Should we take a very quick 5-minute break right now, or should we wait until we're finished with this item before we launch into the fees issue? What is the,
I would recommend finishing.
it's all yours.
Thank you very much. I think I'm going to, since I have the luxury of listening to all the wonderful comments coming from most of my fellow commissioners here, I'm going to take a different approach. I'm probably spending a little less time on the details of each part, and I actually focus more on the back part of the parks plan because at the end of the day, that's probably not necessarily the parts that the community spends as much time looking at because they're thinking about, I want this kind of facility here. But at the end of the day, that's really where it's going to be at in terms of accomplishing any of the things that the community would like to. Commissioners have had to say. There was an initial comment regarding the type of playground materials that are being used, and I just want to give a frame of reference to the fact that when I was working for OMB in the city of Seattle, we had a problem with our golf courses at the city of Seattle. They originally took a bunch of such dirty dirt that they literally had to close down the golf course to haul all that stuff out. So if you're talking about the importance of using the right materials and to not use those that are known to have particular chemical problems with it, especially in our playgrounds, I think that's something. With respect to, should we be putting in a pickleball court outside of everyone's home? That would be going too far. But should we focus on putting that kind of activity in more areas of our city or racket sports in general? I would say yes, and not only because I'm one of those sport denizens myself, just like we have our pool lady here, but because it's an outdoor recreation whole team, you can just get one other person or 3 other persons with you, and you can play either singles or doubles of this. And because of the fact that pickleball arguably has become so popular because it has a very low entry point in terms of you don't have to have as many athletic skills, you don't have to pay for as much equipment and so forth. So that has arguably been why there's been such an increase. And we have had a number of people contacting, I'm sure each one of us here on the dais, in addition to the fact that staff has done and also to our consultants to find the spaces in the city that we can actually put these kind of things that will not be of a disturbance to the community in terms of the auditory problems that come especially with the racquetball courts. So, or not racquetball courts, pickleball courts. We don't even have the racquetball courts. I won't even go there. So I'm definitely in favor of the direction that we're going there. And one other thing I want to add to that, not that I'm stepping on the toes of our special subcommittee, I can tell any more tennis courts in the city, if you multi-stripe a tennis court, you may not play a USTA-sanctioned tennis match on it, period, and stop. They won't go for it. So if we can keep the tennis courts as tennis courts and provide the additional racket sport areas for the other communities, I think that's the positive way to go. And that's actually increasing the total number of racket sports. And I'm going to move away from
I
that.
think we did add a couple tennis courts. There was one added at Vets, one or two added at Vets, and there was
Okay,
one.
it's to a comment, a positive, and then something that I'd like to ask that could be there. I know early on in the process, in speaking to the consultants, I said, can we have like a master matrix of all the facilities? And we have one. On page 150 and going on for a few pages, we have something called a park system amenities. Even goes so far as to listing, in some cases, what the condition of those amenities are, which is great. Now, what you need is, that's the before, what's the after? We have it through 200 and plus pages in there, but it would be good to take that matrix and recreate it with what all the recommendations coming out of the plan are. We all know, as we're sitting here, we don't have the money today. Things will change tomorrow with technology or what the community wants and so forth, but at least we know a fairly granular detail. So if we can get the second matrix, that would not only help the community sort of understand, oh yeah, we're actually getting 2 more tennis courts and 10 pickleball courts or whatever it is. And this is what's actually happening with the ball fields. I mean, it's great that we've got the commissioners here to be able to dig that out. And I'm very happy that the community came and was talking about those ball fields, because that's, again, an outdoor recreation activity that's team-oriented and more towards the kids, but there are adults that also do the softball leagues and so forth. So I would really like to see. I think that would be useful to the community. I'm going to go back a little bit and ask just a couple of questions about some specifics on some of the parks. You addressed what the plan was for Blair Hills Park. Into passive park space, is that what you were discussing earlier this evening?
When you say converted, I mean, that field is primarily a passive field space.
Yeah, I'll clarify that as passive according to city council decree. Many moon.
Layout is the way it is. We can't have a soccer game there because the trees are in the way.
And that was the specific reason that it was made a passive.
Interesting. I also wanted to note that I was pleased to see the changes that we're not going to be putting the playground in Carlson Park, and that the bridge portion has been removed from Lindbergh Park. I think for the Carlson Park people or the people around there, they probably window that they wanted 90%, I believe the report said, of the residents in the city live within half a mile walking distance of a park or a parkette or some kind of park facility. So probably what the Carlson Park people are thinking already exists there. But they asked for more seating space. And I wonder if that particular element in parks that are more passive, that we can make sure that Olin has looked at that adequately, and also based on whatever feedback we've gotten from the public, that there's enough places to sit. Because I know, and it's probably when we have along their towel or their blanket, they can sit on the ground, but sometimes people would want to sit on a bench. So we might want to consider how that works, especially in the parks that have passive spaces.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question that's adjunct to that with regard to park benches? I'm wondering, is there sort of in the Parks and Recreation world, is there sort of a understanding that, as there is in transportation, with transportation bus benches, opportunity for people who tend to want to sleep on them. Is that in the parks world as well? And maybe that's why we don't have very many park benches anymore?
Yeah, I mean, they make park benches now that have bumps in them, just like they
Yeah,
do
the
with
lines
the
would be-
bus ones,
So
and
they,
so,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, we added some benches to Coombs, I think, recently, which hasn't been a problem. Obviously, we added some over near the expo line, and they had to take those out because those were being used.
So art, give a great opportunity for people to donate them, you know, memorialize them in some way. So the cost would be, you know, it would be mostly installation, I suppose, but there's an opportunity to do that too with park benches.
Could I throw in real quick to support your park benches? So back in 2019, there was a study that was completed under AARP about age-friendly services in the city, and one of the time, obviously, this was in 2019, so we all know what happened after that, why that got sidelined, but at the time, that was a pretty hot topic, and I think we're restarting that
Age-friendly
Yes.
thing
community.
again, so
Absolutely.
it'll probably get updated again.
Great.
But
But it isn't just, you know, older people.
No,
I
it's-
mean, younger people, kids, you know, sometimes they get tired and, you
Oh,
know,
yeah,
they're
100%.
they're too old to be using a stroller, but they're tired and they, you know, they need some place to go. So, yeah. I just didn't know whether there was a comprehensive way or a just best business practice in the parks and recreation world for figuring that kind of thing out. So I just thought I'd throw it out there. I was struck when I was looking at the part of the draft plan where it was, and there doesn't, if you were to do a Venn diagram of these, there's not very much crossover. Which leads me to thinking that it's really going to be important, governmental or private organizations or other opportunities such as under the Expo line, or the fact that, I don't know how many of you have been up at West LA College. Sometimes when I'm doing my long walks, I go there, and every time I go there, I almost want to pull my hair out. I would hope that, and then maybe this is beyond the scope for Olin, but maybe it's not ultimately beyond the scope of either the commission or staff to look at sort of mini master plan of terms of how we keep track of what these collaborations are and where they're going so they don't fall off the map. Because I think those are going to be really important things in the future. I know we've talked about, we have one, and this is the importance of it, and then I think everybody was backing off because there were sort of issues at the top in the school district. There was a changeover with the superintendent, and then they were going to have a changeover with the school board. But those collaborative efforts and the land spaces or facility spaces that we could have joint uses for are going to be really important, at least in the interim time before we start really purchase small bits of land as they become available. So I'd like to make a pitch for that.
I would like to say that there is an implementation matrix in the draft. That implementation matrix is not fully realized because the draft, we were still waiting to get feedback and changes and everything. So you'll see that implementation looks slightly different in the final plan. Part of that implementation matrix takes all of the goals and actions and methods that are detailed at the beginning of the plan, and it puts stronger timelines on those, and it also associates partners for each of those. So it will
Get to eventually. I would like to maybe think about the possibility of, you know, while we were going through this park master plan, we occasionally had items as a regular basis on our agenda to get up, at least from my viewpoint, these collaboration points that we would consider having that agendized on a regular basis just to see, you know, where we're at or updates on these things. For example, I was talking about the school district, but there were other things in the financial plan of this document that we're talking about. There was a $10 billion climate bond that was passed by the state of California. This was just mentioned in passing, because I don't know how much they've fleshed that out in terms of how much monies that would be available for the kind of projects that we have listed here. But that kind of a future, because this master plan is going to last for quite a while, you have future commissions sitting here or city councils sitting at this dais, they'll want to know how that's going to fit into this whole master plan in terms of the prioritization. So I think that that's going to be pretty important.
I wanted to just briefly piggyback onto your, like, the terms of use and use. And that would be, they do have a swimming pool. I am not sure, but if it does reopen, then this is
Yeah.
something we should be looking at because we are so impacted. And depending on how long it gets to where we can actually build another pool, they might be more inclined to open it sooner if they have some type of agreement with us. So,
I will add that there is a ad hoc subcommittee with city council and that school, and they do meet. I don't know if they have like a set schedule, but they do meet, so there's definitely conversations happening with the
Yeah,
school.
and I did attend the last one. I think Adam and I both attended the last one that they had several months ago.
in addition to what we're working with right now, that's all I was thinking about.
Yeah. Or, I guess this is on us as commissioners to make sure that those members who are on these various ad hoc committees with other organizations understand the urgency that staff has, that the commissioners have for the things that are going into this plan and the work that they're doing on these ad hoc committees. Not that it's just going to be, oh, we're going to meet, we're going to talk about some things, but they can actually put some meat behind it. And we're going to have, so that we don't really have before, or we did have one at one time, a prior master plan. We'll have a good one now that they can use for that purpose. On page 99, it was talking about, and I loved the fact that we've now found these spaces at Culver City Park that we can use for various things. And we were talking about using it as a potential pickleball center and a potential pickleball center that might be revenue generating. And I think that's also a good idea. And it mentioned that one of these is a Caltrans storage area, and I keep meaning to ask this question, so I'll ask it now. Is Caltrans compensating the city for the use of that space? Do we know?
I could look into it. See what
I
can find
think
out.
if they're using it, they should be compensating it because, that's a revenue stream just like anything else. And I don't know, how long it's going to take for there to basically undo the agreement. Maybe we won't want to do it until we're ready to move forward with those spaces. But I would think at a minimum, in the meantime, they should be compensating the city for using that space. And if I had my way, the money would just Public Works Department. I'm curious, are there more trees in our parks than there are on public works spaces in the city? How did that staff member end up in the Public Works Department?
I don't know.
I think it's because Public Works manages the contract for all of the tree-associated activity in the city. and
Including the parks?
arborist.
Including in the parks?
Because they have the arborist, so yes.
Yeah, so that's why he's over there in Public Works.
Going forward of work that needs to be done in the parks, that might be something just to think about going forward, if that's kind of like the best way of going about it or not. I was just kind of curious about that.
I think they actually identified an additional staff member handling arboretorial.
Well, and our department's hiring a landscape architect that would be able to expert to, maybe not an arborist, but a landscape architect.
We touched on the importance of development fees, and we got the bad news that the money won't be in our pockets when we would want it to be, which is a very sad state of affairs. The question that I have is, Updates, I presume that would mean some kind of increases or changes to those fees. The question that I have is relative to when the development starts. If they come in and they're somewhere in the development process and the city has approved it, if they haven't increased the fees at that point, are they going to be using the old fees, or would the city be able to use the new fees once advanced planning is done with their process?
I'm not 100% sure. I know that did come up. I think I actually brought that up in one of our meetings, but I don't know that I've gotten clarification on an answer on that yet.
I think that that's going to be a very important thing to know, and because we know there's already been approved at as we all know when we were going through like fires to get it moving sooner because of when it applies. That's going to be important, particularly since we know we're not going to be getting it now until the certificate of occupancy happens. So that's going to be critical. I mean, just looking at it as one thing, if you apply it and then all the developments are already done and you can't apply that new rate, then you've just left a ton of money on the table. And we're needing money for all of these wonderful projects. So the implementation matrix, which was about on page 220, there was a good job of, in this report, I think, of tying back to other studies that have been done and plans that have been adopted by the city, like bikes. It's actually a column where it listed when a certain part of the general plan is being affected by that. The question that I have going forward, once this Parks Master Plan is adopted by the city, is our Parks Master Plan also going to be something happening, either when it's going to happen, how it's going to fund it? So how does that work? That's kind of like a big question, but
I mean, they just adopted their plan, so I don't know that they're going to be changing it.
well, that was just one I used as an example, but there were a number of these plans that the Parks Master Plan pointed back to. They used it as a reference. They said,
So Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, but they purposely read, I mean, I think Jessica read the injunction with it not to be opposed to it.
right.
So that, I think Jessica went out of her way to
Well,
make sure that was happening.
I know she did, yes, but I'm talking about all the other ones and the changes that are made to them.
So everything with our plan and everything that is referenced in the plan is meant to work together. So instead of talking about general plan, let's talk about the stormwater, because we've had people in the stormwater quality master plan, and we're not going to move a parks plan forward that can be torn up when they decide to put a stormwater project in. So we just something that Jessica did an amazing job of, and something that one of the earliest meetings I had with them, I said, we're not going to make this not be in line with everything else the city wants. Because, again, all has been written in a manner, and the research was done in a manner to make sure it was in line with every plan that is mentioned in that document.
And I actually believe that is the case. My question is more forward-looking. When are those other departments and those other plans going to do the same with the Parks Master Plan?
I mean, I can't speak for other departments, and I can't speak to that future. But I can say that, this is going to City Council for approval. So if approved by City Council, it will be a City Council approved.
And my last question has to do with, I believe Commissioner Bond pointed this out. There's a list of things that can be done and a suggestion of a time frame. This could be immediate. This could be 3.5 years, 5 to 10. And Director Stevens has pointed out in the past that this document, if there is a funding source that becomes available in the future that we're not aware of. So I'm wondering, is there any utility of this commission trying to take a stab at coming up with a list of priorities, or given the recommendations that we work with the staff with on an annual basis through the budget process, or how would you envision this playing out?
That's how I would envision it, is annually when you're looking at budgets and budget recommendations, that you're using that document as, these are some of the things that we would prioritize and things like that. So yes, that's why we don't want to necessarily put in the document, these are the priorities, because the priorities might change from year to year within the document. Plus, again, depending on funding sources too.
Yeah.
So
And so I'm thinking of I'm trying to think of a hypothetical, so how would this work? So let's say that we're working and we decide that, we want to prioritize, let's pick one of the projects, or let's pick a pool. Let's say that we want to prioritize Public Works, all of a sudden gets a bunch of money. And so all these smaller elements that we're talking about, giving different ADA access points, being sidewalks or bike access paths, those kind of things that Public Works might be doing there. They have grant money to do that, and so all of a sudden that becomes a priority. The pool that we wanted to prioritize all of a sudden isn't a priority anymore. How much are these other things that the other departments might be working on and grant sources going to drive that project? Because I think most of us here probably want to see things happening that are parks related.
Are you asking how much will,
There's money hanging on the tree, but when it's grant money, there's a lot of times there's going to have to be a match for it. And once you take the money away for the match, then you don't necessarily have it available for these other things that were also perhaps a higher priority in your Parks Master Plan to get done, because now you've used it. It's great, because we're funding some of these smaller elements that maybe weren't so much as a priority, but we're getting part of this money over here to do it.
I mean, I would let you know that we do, because they're Public Works. And so Public Works wouldn't just randomly come to us saying, we have this grant we got, and so you can't have a pool. We would already be having those conversations with them. And also, Public Works wouldn't be surprised to find out we were installing a pool, because we'd have to be working with Public Works to do that. So, I mean, I think where I'm struggling with your question is that it sounds kind of hinted at in the question that I'm understanding, because I could be misunderstanding the question. But I would just say, overall, Public Works is familiar with the Parks Plan. Once it is approved by City Council, they will be very familiar with the Parks Plan, and there is not a project in the document that Public Works would not understand and be communicating with us about. So if Public Works and PRCS is like, we're going to work on a pool, but Public Works got this grant money.
That's good to know, because things change and priorities in terms of outside money that comes in, and there may be outside money that's oriented towards small little things for our parks, but not necessarily large ones. Then again, it might not. So it was just kind of a future-oriented question. I was trying to understand how it would play out relative to the master plan.
Yeah, and
I'm done.
I think we can speak specifically to Measure M on that, because that's always been intended to be a collaborative pot of funding between transportation and Public Works, and now, Okay, so it's so interesting to hear how everybody approached this in terms of reviewing it and your focus and the content and what you were looking at. And it's a good thing that we all do it a little bit differently, because between the five of us, you've got the whole thing covered. Being a publications person, I actually looked at the document, a number of the things that have been brought up, I also noted as well. In fact, almost verbatim, Vice Chair Alexander, when you were talking about, I wrote, struck by the fact that new parkland opportunities are not aligned with the SB 1000 priority neighborhoods. I mean, so, so we're all contributing to this in these various ways. But So sorry Olin isn't here, but hopefully they will be able, well, a number, just bear with me, because a number of the things that I am going to share over the next few minutes have to do with the document itself. So I'm just going to launch, and I'm just going to go down my list, and it may or may not even require any engagement. I'm just pointing at a little bit of editing. So first of all, overall, just amazing document. I'm just so impressed by the detail and the review of all of these other documents, reports, and plans on the list. Also, with regard to the other the other city and city departments and committees and factors that were discussed, I think the Historical Society also needs to be itemized when in that section, when they're anywhere. So on page 27, there's a graphic that shows partnerships. And I would suggest that the words are added private and nonprofit assets in that graphic under partnerships. Page 28, there's a reference to COVID, and it's in the implementation and funding needs, and it refers to COVID. CS budget has increased over the past decade with the exception of the COVID pandemic. There's a need for more resources, et cetera. With the exception of the COVID, the period of, the time frame of the COVID pandemic. The pandemic wasn't the thing that was increased. COVID, during that time, parks were highly utilized, which has resulted in greater sustained use in the years that have followed. Throughout the document, there are a number of photographs that are great, but they're strangely placed, in my opinion. For example, page 29, right there by the bookstore. I don't understand why it's there. It talks about downtown Culver City facilities have a lot of transportation. This is in the intro. I think it's a cool picture. I think it could be moved someplace else. There are a few of those like that, page those reviewed. Page 33 talks about the numbers of acres of park. The goal is to be 3 acres per 1,000, but my question is, what is it now? And I don't know, I think 94.5 for future needs, so 3 times as much, which has been referenced, was like, well, how are they going to do it? But they can do it. I'm just saying, anytime a goal is referenced, there should be also some kind of reference to what it is now, similar to the matrix that Vice Chair Alexander mentioned. It's showing this is what we have. Well, we need to then see what it would be or what it will be. On page 36, there's a reference to the City Council strategic plan, which was 2018 to 23. That's the old that change potentially every 2 years. That maybe is rhetorical, sort of references also what Vice Chair mentioned, but this was with regard to the City Council strategic planning, which ended in 23. So just a thought. There needs to be something in there that can reflect, or some comment.
I will say that on that page where you're talking about the 2018 to 2023 strategic plan, it's not referencing that we are in line with that strategic plan. It's referencing that strategic plan, because the 2024 one had not happened yet, had not been approved yet when Olin was hired. So that strategic plan, they're referencing what they took out of that plan to apply it in the parks plan. So specifically, it was sustainability and revitalizing Bionda Creek, and plan aligns with that strategic plan. it's more saying, and I can talk to them about clarifying this, but it's saying that they researched that plan and this is what they took from it to put in the parks plan.
Just, so I guess maybe my comment is, consider maybe a statement about all of these plans, some kind of statement that these are all, noted. Moving on. Page 38, the microgrid feasibility report. And it doesn't talk about, it doesn't talk about transportation's element and electric bus needs. I mean, there's a whole electric grid thing. Maybe there should be some comment that transportation element is just some kind of cross-reference to make that relevant. And in figure 28, the buses, it is not compressed natural gas now, it is renewable natural gas. It is compressed, but it's really considered renewable natural gas. And there's, I also have electric bus reference. I think, again, they're trying to make a comment within the figure caption, greenhouse gas reduction efficiency or the use of electricity. We have electric buses, and I don't know what the longer term situation is with that right now, but they might want to consider including that. Park green space and the management of the green space. And there's a picture that's not a picture of park green space. So, okay. Page 40. So again, this is a documentation thing. They've got Culver City Park first, or they've got a picture of Vets Park first and a picture of Culver City Park second, but the narrative is the Culver City Park first and the Veterans Park. I'm not going to get into that. Page 46, note virtual date meetings. So there was a really great section about all of the public outreach that was done and all of the interface. I would suggest that the virtual date meetings be identified. There's the date of the summer virtual in July. They've got all the other dates mentioned, but the virtual one, it just says in July. And the virtual date meeting, that's all in future tense. And at the point that this document is going to be produced, it should be, and currently, it should be past tense. Page 49, 51, I love the photos, love the children and youth were tapped for ideas and feedback. That was great to see that was done, and pictures of that was really excellent. There are a few little typos throughout that I'm not going to go through every single one. But on page 52.
You can also always email me if it's just a typo issue. You can just email it to me.
Okay, I'll email that. I would personally appreciate, maybe the other commissioners would appreciate too, the name of this commission is the PRCS Commission, Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Commission, just the Parks Commission, just to make it consistent and what it actually is. That's a typo. Did the Planetarium Historical Society I already mentioned. On page 58, I think because the arts plays an important part in certain parts of this, I think it would be good to reference it there. The vision and mission are good on page 67. Perhaps here add a page where it first identifies only the goals, which are then broken down in the following pages. It just launches right into them, and there's no context. So I like to see, And it's great that they cross-reference to the relationship with the general plan. That was really, really well done.
Sorry, can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes,
You're asking for maybe like a list of the goals ahead of time?
yes.
Okay.
Just ID them in advance. And then including goals 1 or 3. Okay, and then and goals, either goal number 1 or goal number 3. And programs, facilities and programs can be maximized to include intergenerational activity and use. That word was nowhere in the document, and it needs to be somewhere. I think it's going to be either in goal number 1 or goal number 3. And, the senior center, there's also been some conversations about, potentially changing the name or at least referencing it as a community center that is not necessarily just exclusive, because they do have intergenerational activity there, and it is used for a lot of different things other than just exclusively senior programming. So I think maybe that might be a good place, is again, either goal 1 or goal 3 may be a good place to slip some. Number 3, add language about succession planning, incentives for in-department training and crossover. Page 90, I already mentioned that, struck by the fact about the SB 100s. Page 92, parkland acreage need header. Oh, that should be on the left side of the page, not on the. Right now, if anybody's left is appreciating it. Page
What are
90.
You're saying the word parkland needs a heading
Parkland acreage need. It's a header
on page 92.
on page 92, and it should be on the left side of the page.
Oh, okay, I get what you're saying, okay. I see it.
This is just, okay, page 95. Oh, this is kind of in alignment with, which is Westfield Mall space, purchase or lease or allocate for sports amenities, or generalized as a partnership. Westfield Mall, okay, so we know what happened with the West Side Pavilion. And I think, aren't they converting some of that inside of that to a sports complex? It's the West Side Pavilion.
Yeah, I heard it's gonna be like, and then
Oh,
the
okay.
parking structure looks like it's
Right.
turned into apartments.
Yeah, it's gone through a few iterations.
Yeah.
but
Okay.
I think that, yeah. it's-
But that being said, we do have a mall, and as potentially some of those big box stores fold, I think it would behoove the city to consider looking at Westfield Mall as also an opportunity space for sports-type complexes and recreational use. And for some reason, I have that on page 9 to that partnership opportunity as well. The use of the oil fields is very interesting. I don't know if people know this, but the Baldwin Hills Conservancy, that whole area up there, those county lands were originally being looked at as an 18-hole golf course. And it was saved by some people very close to me. And so now it is the absolute beautiful Baldwin Hills overlook. So the oil fields will be a very interesting development down the road. I love the precedents that are referenced for school and park joint use on page 103, 104, some reference. Page 106, figure 90, that mummy building should not be in our parks plan. Sorry, I don't care what else the point is, that should not be anywhere near our parks plan. It's not a healthy construction, in my opinion, and I'm sure they can come up with a much better picture of the view from wherever that photo was taken. Reference to figure 915, oh, that's a typo, sorry. First block, LA City College, in figure 91 on page 107, there's a reference to LA City College. There's a block that's referenced to LA City College. Did they mean West LA College? Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure if it was actually LA
No,
City
no,
or.
no, it's
okay,
West LA.
Okay.
West LA is part of the LA City College
is.
system, though.
Oh, that's how they call it.
Yes.
Okay.
But
we
us
might
being
as well be
specific is not a bad
specific.
idea, so.
Okay. The programming section, and so it starts around page 108, or activities could be made. I was wondering if figure 107 should reference that building that was the Culver Studios is currently Amazon. Maybe not. Maybe we don't want to put something that's Sony.
Which figure?
Figure 107 on page 119. Okay, in, where are we? Page 130. There's a reference to non-functional turf and the Mowilo, is that how we're pronouncing that? Requirements. I'm concerned about removing too much non-functional turf with full replacement, because passive grassy areas are utilized, so I appreciate that. But I just, from a planning perspective, I'm concerned about just replacing all of these, non-functional turf areas with something else.
I would like to clarify that non-functional turf and passive areas are functional turf. So we could make an argument that we have to keep this turf for this passive area because we're utilizing it for something, whereas like
Okay.
like a median, if there's turf on medians, that's not something that we are utilizing it for, so that would be an area that like we need to
I
replace that
see.
turf.
Okay, thank you for
Is
that.
that the like Cougar Park space? I had to go
Or,
find where the
I
heck
mean,
that
look at
was.
the, like, or maybe even some of the turf out here, like in front of City Hall.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, Carlson, passive grassy space. Yes, thank you for not making those other changes to Carlson Park. The tree canopy, and I also found the designation of those neighborhoods as SB 1, in the SB 1000 designation through the Cal Enviro screen, because they're layered on top. So one of the deficits of those neighborhoods is that they don't have enough tree canopy, and they don't have enough park space. So they're kind of mutually combined. Okay, can areas be determined now because of potential park plans that would change them? That is a question.
I mean, at some of the parks that are in there, they have where they've called out adding trees.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what you're asking.
I'm just saying, can we start that sooner than with a plan?
You mean start?
I'll do a rain dance.
Okay, I have a sort of section on document order and some things like that, which I'll send to you separately.
Okay, that
I don't
works.
have to go on to that. Hold on just a second. Site scale, I love the detail and the indices. Okay, that's also, sorry, hang on just a second. Oh, one thing that I would like to see, this is a document thing, but I want to call it out, is where each park is evaluated, before that section where you start going, I think you may have mentioned something similar to this. Like, on the following pages, each park will be summarized, with an existing condition map, and proposed maps will be presented, and then, then show the 2 keys with the water and trees. Just something to kind of prepare people that this is what they're about to get into now. And for each park, I would put the summary first, and then the existing condition and the proposed condition, and potentially side by side, if that can be done in the document that way. Because I was finding myself going, okay, it starts with the existing, and then here's the description, and then each of the map diagrams of each park should have the name of the park at the top of the document. It's got just existing, and then proposed. It needs to say Veterans Park existing, because it was hard to find where I even was in the document because I couldn't see the titles.
So you're saying, I mean, this is kind of a question about how individuals think, so you can just be like, I don't know, make a decision. You can tell me you don't have an answer to this, but, so you're saying when you're looking at the document, you think it's more valuable to see the maps first than having the description first?
No.
Existing?
Then existing, and then proposed. And in the document, if it's possible to have, because it's a document that opens like this, right? And first, it's also digital. Everything's digital. So
You can page up.
you can go up, down,
Some parks are 3 pages, which,
of what's looking
this
at.
is my,
Community parks, certainly.
this is my concern with what you're recommending.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have the description with all the changes.
No, just the description of the park first.
So part of the issue I think that she's talking about is when you come to the existing map of it, if that's not necessarily your park and you're not as familiar with what these parks are, and there's no title to tell you what that park is, you have no idea
No,
what.
yeah, I understand the title thing.
Yeah.
So my question is, so you're saying it should have a,
So Veterans Memorial Park starts with the description page. This is the description page. It's page 161. And it's got the existing feature trees, which is great. I love that on each of these. And then you show, this is how it is right now. Existing condition, well, Betts Park, existing condition. That's the next thing you see. And then the next thing you see to it. So you have the detail with the numbers that are associated with the numbers on that second map.
okay.
Just, again, this is a proposal from my eyes. I'm concerned about pickleball being on top of the parking structure if there's a parking structure built at the back end of the seniors. No, because right up,
Yeah. We don't have a racket court on the senior. Turn your mic on.
That was, sorry, we originally were talking about it, but the seniors said they didn't want it. So I think we just have it as maybe potentially like an event space or open space or just more parking, but it's not going to be racket courts.
I mean, if you put like,
Still says add racket sports under number 13, which I think is where the confusion is coming from. Whereas if you just look at the
graphic doesn't
picture,
have
the
anything.
graphic looks like, oh, maybe they're like
Bird
tables up
coops
there.
or something.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't,
So I
I
think
mean,
pong.
again, that could change in 5 years from now. Maybe older adults will want,
Yeah, okay,
but I mean,
Yeah.
actually,
thank you.
could be.
Okay. It's right next to senior living, so I don't think that would be good, sound-wise.
they may not be able to hear it anyway.
I didn't say that. I was thinking it.
Oh, none of that. None of that.
What?
We're getting
Wait, what?
punchy now.
I'm kidding.
Okay, hold on a minute. I'm trying to spare you all some of this. Needs to be referenced as in It needs to be referenced in front of the document as in progress somewhere. Because it's just noted on page 187, but it's not, I didn't see it referenced anywhere else. And if there's a Fox Hills specific plan that's in development, at the beginning of the document.
It's a bit hard to reference because it hasn't been taken to city council yet.
Okay. All right, so.
But
put a
it
pin in
is,
for-
I will say that we could reference the general plan in that section. The general plan is a much larger document and it's not,
Yeah.
I don't know if referencing the general plan, because it is mentioned in the general plan at all, also,
Okay.
redeveloping Fox Hills and the Hayden Tract.
Okay.
So,
Okay,
but yeah, we can look at it, we can see how we can better clarify that
Thank you.
information.
I'm glad the community garden, apparently there was feedback on that, they wanted that. Pickleball, I'm a little concerned about there because of the sound, and you've got a lot of apartments and stuff right around there, but we did, by the way, talk about putting a community garden there, too, and I don't know what happened to that, and we don't have to talk about it right now. But as I recall, that was something that was put there. Ideas that are up there. Although, yeah, that's a huge, the way I see it, we've got the Culver Park, we've got Vets Park. I think Fox Hills is just like the next big thing to tackle potentially. But again, priorities funding will determine some of that. Well, excuse me, hold on. Typo, correction. I also felt that we should have, because it's mentioned so much throughout the document, equity being those are typos, graphic, duplicate content, buildings, bold front. Okay, hold on a minute. I'm almost done. Look, I'm almost at the end of my 6 pages. Nonprofit partner conservancy, yes. Community engagement. Okay, page 226. Add intergenerational to the list again. Paid peacekeeping. Oh, paid placekeeping. They reference paid placekeeping. How does that work? And why do we pay them? You guys know what I'm talking about there? Page 226. They're talking about paid placekeeping.
What is that?
Yeah. Community engagement and paid placekeeping. Oh, it says, plan should value groups and participants who are already taking an active role in community development through paid placekeeping. As an alternative to placekeeping, would value their engagement through monetary compensation for time or effort spent on engagement, events, and activities employed. I'm not familiar with that process, or is that something that is done in parks and recreation communities and culture across the country?
I'd have to review that page. I'm not familiar with that
Okay.
part of the plan that I've,
Yeah, we have to
Focused
be
on.
careful what we're putting in here. Somebody could read that and go, oh, yeah, well, great. Get paid for it. Okay. There's also another term called flood carrying. It's on page 230. I'm not familiar with, and it is a little bit confusing. Let me find it here. It's in 1A. It's in, just if the staff could please just take a look at that.
Okay.
And then, then I have a couple of more document things, formatting things to make them consistent. But that's all. Thank you for bearing with me. I know it's, nerdy and dweeby, but that's what I do. So my fellow commissioners, for your insight and the time that it's taken. It's really exciting. And so that's all I have to say about that. Do you want to take a quick break just to?
So I would like to just have you all do, if you, I can have a motion to receive and file the draft plan.
Motion
So
to
moved.
Oh,
receive.
yeah, okay. So,
It's
wait,
first,
wait, wait,
second,
I gotta
third,
go
and
back to
fourth.
my page because we don't have all the technology working tonight. Okay, so I have a motion. I heard Commissioner Mohammed first, and I saw Vice Chair Alexander's hand second. To receive and file the the draft plan of the Parks and Recreation Parks Plan. Motion by Commissioner Mohammed, seconded by Vice Chair Alexander, and to vote, Commissioner Peters,
Aye.
Commissioner Bond,
Aye.
Commissioner Mohammed,
Aye.
Vice Chair Alexander,
Aye.
Chair Leonard.
I have a question. Am I out of order?
You're out of order. You can always email it to
We
him.
just, okay, all right, with all the things that have been said?
Yeah.
Aye,
Okay.
thank you.
And with 5 ayes, that passes unanimously. Something I want to mention before we take recess is you all can, as a commission, move anything on tonight's agenda to another agenda night if you would like. I would say everything on this agenda can be moved, except for one thing I would like us to address. And that is the admin. Everything else can be moved if you would like, or you all can talk about order the agenda and if you want to keep anything. I want to say that before you take a recess, because it could be that this meeting ends quickly, if you all choose to move everything to a future date.
Okay, so what
I
we,
think it's a little late for this meeting to earn quick.
yeah, no, okay, let me just take a look here.
That specific item that is in A3, I would like to kind of talk about the fee study tonight and have you all consider an ad hoc subcommittee if you all would like to create one, because the timing of that is coming up fast.
Yeah.
And I have some dates that are very immediate that I would like to work with the ad hoc subcommittee on. So that's why I'm requesting that it be discussed tonight. But for that item, the overall budget review was primarily, can move that to January. I will say January, right now, you have 2 items on that agenda. It is the final plan of the Parks Plan. I feel like with all the feedback we've gotten tonight, Olin will be here and they will be doing a pretty detailed presentation going through stuff for you. But, I mean, well, that is happening at the January meeting. And then there is an agendized update from the ad hoc subcommittee on dual striping tennis courts, because it kind of goes in line with what we're talking about with the Parks Plan. So that is your second item that night. So we could add the budget letter discussion then. February, we have already, staff has added an item, which I was going to tell you about during that agenda. March currently doesn't have anything. So again, we can redistribute tonight. The only thing left on tonight's agenda that is not like a standing item, your biannual report, we do need to handle tonight. So
We
that,
do have to handle that
you
tonight?
need to handle it tonight, because I have to turn that, no.
Just the one saying what we've been up to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, those are my recommendations, are we take care of A4, we do a very abbreviated A3, and then everything else can just be pushed to a future meeting.
Okay. All right, how do the other commissioners feel about that? I think that that's a good
I
plan.
agree.
I agree.
Okay, all right. Do we need to take a break, or people can just get up and do their own thing if they have to? Yes. All right, we're just gonna, let me just take 5 seconds, because I have to close my eyes for just a minute. I'm not gonna fall asleep. Okay, do we just take them one at a time and move them as we can?
I mean, no, I think we can take let's just take it one at a time.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so, moving on to A3. I'm just going to pretend it's 8 o'clock. Okay, we have receipt and filing of the report regarding the Parks Recreation Community, RCS, Commission Recreation Programming and Rentals Fee Study Ad Hoc Subcommittee. And then the third section is, if desired, appoint 2 PRCS Commission members to the newly formed Ad Hoc Subcommittee. So, how much, this is a question for staff, how much of the consideration of forming this subcommittee is informed by the receipt and filing.
January.
So we could just jump to number 2.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I get a consensus?
Or do we need a
Yes.
motion to
No, I
table?
think I can do it as consensus.
Okay.
Sense.
So I have a consensus from Commissioner Bond. I see Vice Chair Alexander nodding her head. I see Chair Leonard. I see Commissioner Peters, and I see Commissioner Mohammed. So I have full consensus to move the first part of A3 to the January. Fly through this and get to the last part of the presentation.
Questions? Yeah, what was that?
So,
That's a little.
So the finance department did do a fee study. The fee study was just an overall view comparing other cities and other best practices of that fee study. The PRCS chapter kept it a lot more broad than other departments because they're recommending that we do our own, create our own policy about fees. They are recommending that moving forward, we start utilizing this formula, which is on the screen. The formula hasn't been fully approved, and it may change and alter a little bit. What makes PRCS slightly different than other departments is that we are dealing with a much more of a competitive market, and that's what this formula addresses. And overall, that's what the chapter is recommending, that we have more flexibility each year to present fees to, because they are requesting that we do our own analysis and recommendation of changes in the fees. New fees are going to City Council. You will notice PRCS fees are not changing currently. And the reason for that is because the consultant and finance agree that we should do our work first before we even try to attempt to change anything. So over the next 6 months, we are doing a pretty detailed working sessions with fees to figure out some key changes to our fee policy that then we can take forward to City Council and recommend new fees that would hopefully, if the timeline works out, we'd be implementing new fees for July. The new fiscal year. So with that background of the fee study, we are starting to rethink our cost recovery targets and our subsidy policies because that is at the core what we are running into issues with our current, the cost of our services, and how do we incorporate direct costs versus indirect costs because in looking at how the fees were created in the past, indirect cost was not taken into account as seriously as I would prefer it to be. So looking at those full cost of services is being reevaluated. And again, as I've already mentioned, we're wanting to develop and recommend new policies that will be kind of more standalone, focused on our department that will go to City Council. We are utilizing working sessions. And before it goes to City Council, of course, it would come back. It's important to remember ad hoc subcommittees cannot approve anything. The commission can. So timeline.
Yes, we
My
do.
first working session with PRCS staff is Monday. So I am here to answer any questions you have about this fees process. I am the staff member that's been assigned to oversee it. If you are thinking, I really want to be on that ad hoc subcommittee, if possible, it is at 1:00. So I know that makes it difficult for a lot of you. If the ad hoc subcommittee is created and whoever ends up on it, if you all cannot make the Monday session, I understand because it's so last second. And I can definitely work with the ad hoc subcommittee to get you up to date with what happens. But that is how quickly this is going to be moving. Because not only does finance have to deal with, we have budget requirements coming up, like all the things that always happen are still always happening. We still have to now get this done in 6 months. So, for everyone to understand, this ad hoc subcommittee will be working fast and furiously with staff. And whichever finance staff she wants there, I would also have the ad hoc subcommittee there as well. So it is my request is that this ad hoc subcommittee is like a very involved ad hoc subcommittee that then, again, 6 months from now will be dissolved because we will have done all our hard work. I flew through that quickly because of anything, so.
Okay.
Got a question. Are these meetings going to be all Zoom meetings, or are they going to be in-person meetings, or?
This first one is in person. I prefer, because of the content that's being created, that it be in person, primarily because the working session, we're dealing with flashcards, which, one thing I am recommending, and we'll see if finance gets on, again, it's who knows what it looks like 6 months from now, but one thing I'm recommending is that we change our thinking from a service area mindset, which a service area is defined as being like in description. So like aquatics is a service area, right? We change from thinking of our programming fees that way and start switching to a service category area. So instead of going aquatics, we want a cost recovery of 40%, right? We would say, so all beginner level activities, your cost recovery is 25%. And a beginner level activity would be learn to swim at the pool. It would be intro to ceramics. It would be intro to fencing, so that we start to get more focused on how can we, I care about aquatics, so I just want to keep aquatics low. So that type of work in these working sessions does involve, we have cards with categories and people arrange how we want to look at them. We'll be adding different categories based on what people recommend. So the intent right now is that it will be in person because of the type of working session it is. But I'm also understanding the timeline finance has given me is I don't want to say insane, but I'm going to. And finance has even said, we're not even sure you can do this in this timeline. Like, it is a very challenging timeline. So if we have to switch to virtual meetings, I'm not a
Very, very good at letting us know that every time an ad hoc committee is developed, it is because it has a very specific task.
You have a task here.
Sounds extremely broad. Is it basically, what would be the task specifically, so that, is it basically just all in with the, concurrent with the city's work on the fee study and that's it? Or is it, what is the?
The task would be to help to work along staff to help develop the policy for PRCS fees.
Okay,
Because again, that policy will be going to city council.
yeah.
It might be tagged into the overall fee civic policy on how subsidy and cost recovery is going to change for PRCS.
So this is specifically about policy and not actual amount of how much, what the fees are going to be. We're just dealing primarily with policy?
So what it will be dealing with primarily is creating a system that then the fees will naturally come out of. So how we consider what facility costs are for all of our programming, and then how do we incorporate that as indirect cost, so that when we're talking about the finance and PRCS and the ad hoc subcommittee say that CARP should be 80% subsidized, and our cost recovery for CARP should only be 20%. Then what are the tools in place so that we can make sure we're understanding those costs of that program accurately so that we are meeting that 20% goal? So it's policy in order to create a much more detailed formula, basically, that will $30. It won't be that.
Are there any other questions before we start figuring out who's going to be the two people? Any other
We have to
questions?
decide whether we're going to do it first, and then we decide who the people are.
We can do one motion to create it and appoint the two people.
I think we should also, do we know how often they're going to meet? Because I think that will also, is it going to be monthly? Is it going to be weekly, bi-weekly?
It won't be weekly or bi-weekly.
Okay.
I don't have a schedule of the meetings because I need to get through this first one to see where we end up behind it is that you have the PRCS meeting. This working session with PRCS staff, I'm going to try to make it the one meeting, but in my gut, I'm worried it might be two. We might not get through everything, so we might come back in January, but I want the ad hoc subcommittee to be with PRCS staff, to be with finance staff. I think I can do that meeting and city manager together. I don't know if they would need to be separate, so you might have those 3 meetings. And then if they would want to meet with me individually. So we're looking at 5 meetings tops.
So at least once a month.
So at least once a month.
At least once a month.
Welcome to me
Twice a
doing
month.
math at like.
Okay, are there any other questions before we, okay, so the first motion is to form this ad hoc subcommittee.
I motion.
Second.
Okay. You got that, Adam? Commissioner Bond, and seconded by Vice Chair.
Or PRCS fees, and to vote, Commissioner Peters,
Aye.
Commissioner Bond,
Aye.
Commissioner Mohammed,
Aye.
Vice Chair Alexander,
Aye.
and Chair Leonard.
Aye.
And that passes with 5 ayes unanimously.
Okay. So, who is interested?
I'd be interested in doing it and have enough flexibility and could be there on Monday.
You be there?
I could be there on Monday.
I,
And Commissioner Bond, did you say you also were interested?
yeah, I'd be interested. I won't fight for it, but
Okay. If you won't fight for it, then we've got to leave it to these 3 people to decide how the people here, I would, not throw my hat in. So,
I'll just throw in that
Each of you has
if
to-
it overruns the designated time frame, I will not be able to finish.
that's a good point.
As of December 3rd, we are supposed to start the new fees July 1st. So
Okay.
again, it's a harsh timeline. I think we
That is
all
really
can acknowledge that it's a harsh
Welcome
time.
to my life.
So they want,
Money.
I've been asked by finance to take it to city council in one of their meetings in June if I can make that deadline happen.
Don't forget, it's been quite a while since they've been adjusted, so we already have an opportunity cost if we go any further.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, again, we're looking more at policy.
Right. Policy will determine the
Well, yeah,
numbers,
the
basically.
policy will determine what the,
Well, stating my case is, as I was alluding to before, in my past career as city treasurer and a budget officer and so forth, I've done this not as much at a department level, but more at a citywide level. So I would definitely be understanding, finance speak that would be coming from the finance department in terms of what they're trying to accomplish with it. And the orientation is of the department and listening to my fellow commissioners in terms of what they think about programming. I'm thinking back to the last discussion that we were having about the summer camps and whether we believed that they should have to pay separately for going to Magic Mountain or whether that should be built into the fees and those kind of things and why. So those might be the kind of discussions that we get into in terms of the policy of that and the why behind it. Because what we do here at PRCS is very broad and a very broad audience, but we also have to remember that we have to pay for it, so.
next
Next.
victim.
So it was really, in part, the discussion of indirect costs, which is something that I think about when I do like grant applications and things like that and fees and thinking about, as somebody who also works at a public institution, of how do you recoup fees and what do you charge for things? How do you recoup your costs? So I think I've got a good handle on that. I think also when we think about who should be on the ad hoc, as you know, I think the only one was in that sense. And I will say, I'm going to have a certain view that certain things should be subsidized more than others, that maybe we should find somebody who feels differently in terms of, I would say everything for kids should be free, but I get that that's impossible. But I think, having a range of views and of kind of what is needed and what is feasible for different age categories of our users, I think is a good thought.
Law at this point. So working policy stuff is what I have done a lot of while I'm here, while I've been here on this commission. I do deal with overhead costs very often in my real life job, although I'm not looking to recoup it. I'm trying to make sure that the government doesn't pay too much of it. I'm familiar with those kinds of costs and those kinds of things. But yeah, this is really seeming like really more policy conversations about how to evaluate how we're going forward. So, I've gotten deep into PRCS policy So I kind of know a lot of it, and my fingerprints are all over a lot of it. So I think,
Turn your mic on.
I thank you. I know some of you are already also on some other ad hoc subcommittees as well as other subcommittees. You know, are you anticipating that any of that is going to potentially overtax you or any of that?
I think we're hopeful that the ad hoc subcommittee about hope. I don't think we have looking at Commissioner Bond, I don't think we have a huge amount more work on that. So I think that will be done at that point.
Okay. And
let's see, it's
you are
the,
both on the
yeah, the Olympics.
Olympics.
That-
which is,
We haven't heard anything.
Yeah,
recently.
it is. Yeah, it's
That's
almost,
more of like just an on-call one.
yeah,
and
so,
you're also on.
and we haven't been called very often, and then, you know, recent elections, it's gonna be yeah, we're probably sitting on hold for a little while on that one.
I will say if I am selected and the meeting is Monday at 1, I'll have to turn to Commissioner Bond to cover the senior center meeting. It's at Monday.
That can be done.
Okay. Well, there are 3 of you who want to be in 2 spaces. I'm not allowed to make a motion or make a recommendation?
No, you can make a motion, and if it doesn't, and we can vote, and if it doesn't pass, it goes back to discussion.
Vice Chair Alexander brings a great perspective to this as having been involved in it before. I mean, Commissioner Mohammed has got a lot of the actual policy, you know, experience from sitting on this commission for a long time, and I also really like the opportunity for Commissioner Peters to step in and participate as well. So, Commissioner Bond, do you have any?
I actually am feeling the same way you are, because there's 3 totally different perspectives. I think all of them would be excellent on this particular ad hoc committee with Commissioner, or Vice Chair Alexander, all of her experience with the city, and Commissioner Mohammed with all of his experience with writing policy, but your perspective with the kids having actual kids and then what you work with at UCLA, it's any one of you. It's part of the reason why I said
Back and move myself from the,
Well, let me, thank you for that. I owe you like a box of See's candy and yellow roses or whatever you like. But you know that coming down the pike is a whole lot of other stuff that you will be hands-on. You will be hands-on about, with, you know, especially with this next term, these next terms, with people leaving the commission. So, okay, thank you for that. I'd like to make a motion that these 2, Vice Chair Alexander and Commissioner Mohammed, be identified.
So I have a motion by Chair Leonard, seconded by Commissioner Bond, to add Vice Chair Alexander and Commissioner Mohammed to the ad hoc subcommittee for PRCS fees. And to vote, Commissioner Peters,
aye.
Commissioner Bond,
aye.
Thank you very much.
Don't make me regret this, Adam.
And,
So
okay, so
I'll have to tell them not to have
A4
it in the
is
committee and bump it out.
the drafting of a PRCS biannual report to the city council, including accomplishments during their period July through December 2024, and an update on the upcoming 2025 plans and transmit.
So as the policy requires, we have to do a biannual report. part of that biannual report, you have to list your accomplishments from the last 6 months, and you have to talk about what you're going to focus on for the upcoming 6 months. So we're talking July, what staff has recommended, and again, we can edit this completely in this moment. Staff is recommending the following accomplishments. You held a special meeting to consider various complaints the commission had received regarding the use of racket courts in Culver City and provided recommendations to the department. You formed a dual-striped tennis courts ad hoc subcommittee to meet with staff and recommend to the commission any tennis courts in Culver City that could be converted to dual-striped multiple-use courts. You received and discussed monthly updates on the parks plan from PRCS staff and from Olin in preparation for the review of the final plan. You held a special meeting to discuss and learn about the plunge policies, rules, procedures, and revenue. You held a PRCS commission meeting at the recreation building located at Culver West Alexander Park, allowing the community near that park easier access to attend the meeting. For PRCS commission goal, a recommendation to city council for approval. You will review the PRCS budget information from the 2025-2026 fiscal year and consider budget adjustments to recommend to city council. And you'll work with PRCS staff to evaluate program fees and make recommendations to city council.
So that last one, we would just modify that to say established a subcommittee, an ad hoc subcommittee to do that. I mean, I know that that's in January to December, but it applies to what's happening in January.
Correct. I mean, you can make it a
Yeah.
goal because the bulk of the work
That's
will be in January to June.
Is there anything else?
Can you go
Back up.
scroll back up, please? I wanted to read the first one again, because I think as I recall, the complaints were not about all bracket courts. They were more specific.
They say you couldn't talk about it, so we left the item open to be safe for that. So the actual item was for all racket courts, but if you all would like to say it was specific to the Linda courts, you can, because it is your biannual report.
Well, the reason that we were having the meeting had to do with complaints of specific kinds of courts, not all courts.
And Alinda specifically, wasn't it?
Well, yes, that's what started the discussion, yeah.
Yeah, but I would say we did venture into the restriping of tennis courts.
Well, I think that's brought up in the next
Yeah,
one.
well,
I think in that first bullet, because that's what you provided recommendations on,
Yeah.
yeah. we
was on
could
the Olinda
specify
court. So
that.
you could leave everything else generic
I
and
would
just
make
say,
that, I would vote for that ad.
Yeah, okay.
if you wanted to call, if you
Regarding
need
the
or wanted to
Olinda.
call out Olinda, you could
Call-
attribute it to the recommendations that you made.
Yeah, that looks good.
Maybe you could actually call them Alinda paddle tennis courts, because that's what they actually are. Okay.
This is like a little picky thing, because I think we had to learn about them first before we could discuss them.
You could have added 5 more pages to my
Oh, boy.
list for the parks plan.
Oh, girl, I like highlighted it. I saw those too.
Okay. Think of anything else?
I like it.
I like it too.
Yes.
Anything else?
I second.
Oh, sorry, my head was down. You, okay.
My head is bouncing. Good job, Adam. Thank you. We've been busy. Wait,
And we are getting a little punchy.
Oh, yeah.
We need pizza now.
But then I need the
think we're
beer
getting-
with it, I don't think.
They gotta
I'm
be getting
allowed.
there too.
Okay, so I have a motion by Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Commission biannual report to the City Council, including accomplishments during the period July through December 2024, and an update on the upcoming 2025 plans and authorization for transmittal of the report to City Council. And to vote, Commissioner Peters,
Aye.
Commissioner Bond,
Aye.
Commissioner Mohammed,
Aye.
Vice Chair Alexander,
Aye.
Chair Leonard.
Aye.
With 5 ayes, that passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much. We have the next two items, A5, receipt and file updates regarding our appointments to associations and city.
If you would like to postpone this until January, because it is a standing item, so you'll have it in January, you can.
Yeah.
Can we get a motion for both A5 and A6?
motion.
Yes.
Okay.
So I have a motion by Vaughn,
Wow.
seconded by Peters, Commissioner Peters. Move the information that is provided for in A5 and A6 to the January 2025 PRCS Commission meeting. And to vote.
Aye.
And we will move all of that information to January.
Thank you. Do we have any more public comment?
You do not.
Items from staff?
Okay, good
Thank
evening.
you for staying here with us.
I will make this quick. I just wanted to inform you that we have a date for our annual Martin Luther King Jr. celebration, which is on Saturday, January 11th, from 2 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. at Veterans Memorial Auditorium. The program will include live entertainment. We'll have special guests, our elected officials, a resource fair, refreshments, and raffle prizes. For 2025, we are offering a contest. It's called Fellowship and Beyond Video Contest for all of the community members if they're interested in participating. In addition, or I should say, encouraging them to participate in a service project. This year, we actually had a service project for Martin Luther King at the Teen Center. But for 2025, staff decided to just have community members find an organization in Culver City that they can volunteer with. It can be 1 hour, it can be 100 hours, it's up to the community member. And every person who participates will receive a certificate of recognition at the event. It's a free event for everyone. We are encouraging for all of our commissioners, if you're available, please stop by the event. And we'll also send a reminder email. I know it's a late meeting, so we'll make sure that staff or Adam, if he doesn't mind, send out a reminder email with the flyer so that you guys can have that information. But I just wanted to make sure that you all pencil in the date. Thank you.
Already got it on my calendar. Okay.
Adam, do you have anything?
Happens in December. So your January meeting, we have reserved the Rotunda Room at Vets. So just know that email will be coming as a reminder, but the meeting will be held at Vets.
I don't have much since we just met like a week and a half ago. Just reminder, the plunge is closing down for a couple weeks in December for maintenance. And we are going to be doing a rehab on the field over at Blanco Park. So we'll be shutting that down and rehabbing it, seeding it. Permission, we're working with the school, and we're going to shut down that grass area and get some grass growing back out there.
Some hybrid bluegrass, right?
Hopefully. And that's it.
Okay, great. Anything else from members? Probably not at this point. Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, that was Vice Chair and Commissioner Mohammed. From Vice Chair Alexander, seconded by Commissioner Mohammed.
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you all very, very much for your patience.